Any Harry Potter fans out here? So, you know the part of the story where the Ministry of Magic finally figures out what's going on? And, like, everybody else was kind of hip to what's happening. He's like, you know, he starts talking about Voldemort, and what did he say? He's back! So, anyway, I'm back. So, who here has ever been scared in their life? Who here has ever had to do hard things? Who here has ever had to do hard things when you were scared? So, as Paul mentioned, I've been with the company for a while. I've been in the industry since 2005, and you know the fact that I am where I am today is really it's not just one miracle; it's a series of miracles, and it's been the process of transformation that has actually gotten me here. And you know, the night that my father stopped his truck along Highway 1 in Bodega Bay at about 2:30 in the morning and pulled out a gun and put it to the side of my head and threatened to blow my brains out was not the first time that I thought that he might kill me. But it was the first time that I realized he was taking this threat very seriously. See, as I was growing up, many times he used to tell me he'd take me out in the backyard and shoot me and bury me, and nobody would care. He used to tell me that I didn't live there, that I was just visiting, and he would tell me how worthless that I was. And on that night, all I could think to myself was, this isn't happening. And then I realized, oh, you know what? This is happening. And he started shouting profanities and told me to get out of the truck. And so like any smart person, because I consider myself a smart person, I did exactly what he told me to do. I got out and I started running. And I could only imagine the look on his face, because what I thought was a hill actually turned out to be a thorn bush that was covering a pretty deep ravine. And so when I went to step uphill, I actually got swallowed up by this bush and fell about 6 or 8 feet down to the bottom. And as I lay there in silence, you know, wondering if he was outside the truck looking for me, for what seemed like an eternity, all I could think of was I have two options. You know, I can either stay here, or I could, you know, take my chances and climb up out of the ravine. And it was raining that night, and it was foggy, and it was wet, and it was muddy. And when I finally decided to climb out, it was because I could actually hear the truck go into gear, and I heard him drive off into that night. And when I decided to make my climb, the only thing I had to grab onto was those thorn bushes. So here I'd made a decision that I wasn't going to stay there, that I wasn't going to stay down in the pit, right? That I was actually going to climb out and I was going to make something happen. But the climb was steep, and it was wet, and it was muddy, and all I had to grab onto were thorns. So you can imagine, I was scared, and I had to do something difficult. But I did it anyway. And that started the journey that eventually led to where I am today. And so I'm not going to tell you the rest of the story now, right? But what I mentioned is transformation. And what I learned over the next several years are the things that got me to where I am today. Now, each of you has a message. Every one of you has a message. How many here have ever considered our coaching certification program? Right? Because you feel you have something to share. How many of you have thought about our authorship program? How many of you considered getting in front of people, like what we're doing up here? Because you have something to share. So what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about the process of how you become a person that is transformational. Anybody can motivate, right? Anybody can get up there and pump you full of energy, get you excited, and get you motivated. Who here has ever been to a seminar where you got really excited on Saturday and Sunday, and then you got home on Monday, you know, it was time to pick up the phone, and you went squeak, 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 right? So what's going to keep you connected? What's going to help you to become transformational? And that's what we're going to talk about today. So, hope you all got your notes out. I generally do not speak from an outline, but I'm going to today because there are some fixed parts that are very important. I don't want to leave anything out. And so what I just did with you is I asked you some enrolling questions, right? I wanted to get you involved. The first key to being transformational is getting the people that you're talking to involved. And so I got you involved, not just mentally, but I got you physically involved. Who here can tell how I got you physically involved? What did I do? Raised my hand, right? I nodded my head. I wanted you guys to mirror what it is that I'm doing up here. Because if I can get you to nod your head and raise your hand, then I can get you to say yes. Right? That's the first step to helping you make transformation. Okay? So, there are 3 levels of involvement. So the first one is nonverbal. If I ask you something, and in your mind you're agreeing, right? You don't do anything physical, but at that point you're involved, right? The next level, what do you think the next level is?
A nod or
Yeah, getting you to nod or to raise your hand. And then the third level is both mental and physical. I get you to nod and raise your hand, and and you're thinking some things. It's like the story of the pig, right? The guy sat down, ordered breakfast, diner, and he had some eggs, and so the chicken was involved, right? The farmer was involved. The waitress was involved. But the pig was committed. So the key is to get you guys to commit, right? I want you to start committing to some things as we go. And you're going to learn the process of getting the people that you're going to help transform to commit to some things. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to ask some enrolling questions. And you can do that if you're a coach. You want to do that on coaching sessions. If you're speaking to people, you want to do that while you're speaking. If you're writing a book, you want to ask some enrolling questions throughout the course of your book. Right? You want to know that the reader, at some point, you won't be there to see it, maybe you will, I don't know. But generally, you just want the reader to start nodding, right? You want the reader to start thinking some things. You want the reader to get involved and get committed to what's going on and what you have to say. So the next step, and I didn't spend too much time on this because I was here yesterday. You guys pretty much know who I am. There are some times where you're going to have to talk a little bit about who you are, maybe just a couple of minutes, right? Why do you think that's important? Who here can maybe share why they think that you might have to tell people who you are?
So people can relate to you?
Yeah, yep. Sometimes you might want to share what your background is, right? To demonstrate, that you have some experience or some credentials. It's not always. There are a lot of situations where the very fact that you're going to be in front of people is your credential. When they threw me up here, and I came up all wide-eyed and high-strung yesterday, was there any doubt that I belonged up here? Did you ever think, well, who's this guy? Why is he here? No, right? The setting warranted the fact that, I'm up here sharing. You're going to have those experiences if that's what you choose to do. But there will be some experiences where you're going to have to tell people who you are, because sometimes knowing that you have experience helps to make you more credible, right? You don't necessarily need the credibility in every situation, but sometimes it helps. Anybody have any questions about that? So, now we get into the good stuff. Who here knows what the hero's journey is? All right. What's your first name again? Dory. So tell us your understanding of what the hero's journey is.
Basically, I got from it that it's saying that everyone has a story to tell.
That's right.
And all the stories and all the movies and all the things that have ever been written through history are all telling a story about something,
That's right.
about their life, about a journey that someone takes in their life.
So every hero has a period that we call the pit. My wife and I think that it's the greatest irony that I fell into the ravine that night. Because that really was kind of my pit, right? I mean, I was down there for what seemed like an eternity. And, it was like Obi-Wan Kenobi had come up and said, you want to rethink your life, right? Anybody remember that part? You want to buy some death sticks? Rethink your life. So I was really there kind of rethinking my life. And I knew from that point that nothing would ever be the same. That even though the gun didn't go off by some miracle, because I anticipated, as I moved away from the truck, I anticipated the moment that the gun would go off and that a bullet would rip through my back. and then I would just bleed out internally, and there was nobody there to see it. I mean, it was a pretty, remote place. There were no cars. It was the middle of the night. What could be done? I thank God that it didn't happen. Not just for me, but I thank God that it didn't happen for him. But it caused me to rethink my life. And I made some decisions. I spent the next several miles. I actually walked 25 miles before I could hitch a ride. And I just contemplated what was going on, and I used a pocket knife to dig thorns out of my hands. And that was the extent of my night. But out of that came the next thing that we call the elixir, right? What's the elixir? Anybody know what the elixir is? Is that your hand going up? No? What do you think the elixir is?
The motivation, the secret sauce in moving forward.
You got it. Okay, but do you spend the rest of your life just drinking your own elixir? No, that's when the hero comes back out of the desert, right? I've got the elixir. Now, it took me a long time. It took me, 20, 25 years to start to mix up this elixir. But eventually I got there where I realized, hey, I've got the secret to helping people transform their lives. It wasn't all me, right? It was stuff that I borrowed here and I borrowed there. How many of you have ever thought, well, I don't really have anything to share, I'm just a fraud, or everything I know I just got from somebody else. I mean, personal development, it's the one place where you can plagiarize and not get in trouble. Right? Because everything comes from somebody else. And so this is the part of your journey where you're going to tell how you came about your elixir, right? How you came out of the pit. And your pit is individual to you. And so I'm going to ask some of you to get vulnerable and to tell us maybe a little bit about what your pit has been. Anybody feel up to that? I got a yes or can I get a yes? Who here wants to tell a little bit about their pit? Or their desert experience? I know everybody's...
Is that like when you had a transformation and changed, or what?
That's the downside, when you thought it was the darkest, right? And you thought maybe I can't go forward, or this is the end for me, or this is the worst place I've ever been in my life. Hmm? Has anybody ever felt like they ever hit a rock bottom? Marcy.
My pit was, my husband was mentally ill, it affected children, he couldn't work anymore, I was trying to run his business. And again, not knowing, he wound up killing himself. And again, that was my choice. I could be for me with what happened, or come out of it and be stronger.
What did you learn from that experience?
How strong I can be. Yeah, it was powerful because I didn't fear death anymore. I learned what I was capable of doing. I wanted to be the strong one for my children.
How long ago was that for you?
That was 28 years.
28 years ago. I want you to do something for me. I want you to close your eyes. I want you to take yourself back in time, knowing what you know now. And I want you to go back to Marcy 28 years ago. What would you tell her? What advice would you give Marcy as she's struggling with those things?
She has it within her. It's all she's always had it. She's always had that strength.
So isn't that what you would tell other people?
Mm-hmm.
Is there anybody here that needs to hear that message? That you've always had it within you? Mm-hmm. You've always had that strength? Is there anybody that ever doubted if they've had it within them? I know I did. For the majority of my life, I didn't believe that I deserved to be alive. I just felt like I was living life on borrowed time. And over the course of the years, not getting the results that I wanted was just proving my father right, time and time again. Right? So for me, that was kind of the pit extended in a way. I mean, coming out of that ravine was maybe short term, but the entire journey was trying to overcome those beliefs that I didn't have it within me, that I didn't deserve it, or that maybe certain things weren't meant for me. Maybe I was going to amount to nothing. Right? And those were the messages that were in my head. My self-talk came in the voice of my father for many years. Like I didn't even recognize my own voice inside, because every time I put my head on the pillow at night to go to sleep, he'd show up telling me what I wasn't, what I could never become, right? I mean, everything that he had told me from the time that I was a child was just perpetuated in his voice. And so sometimes the journey is longer for some than others. Maybe your journey, is going to be quick and you'll be out of the pit and you'll have something awesome to share. So don't judge the length of the journey, right? Just know that if it's within you, if you feel inspired to share it, that is proof in advance that it is already meant for you. The divine has already put that in place, right? All you have to do is continue the journey. Who here has ever heard somebody say, "Well, if you knew that you couldn't fail, what would your goals be?" Right? Anybody ever hear that?
Yes.
Do you guys know that you can't fail? Have you ever felt and believed that you can't fail? I mean, where does that desire come from? Anybody want to take a shot at that? Where does that inspiration to be transformational come from? Where do your goals come from?
Well, for me, it comes from my heart.
Sure.
Like, I connect in, and it's like, I don't know how,
Yep.
but I can do that, and I'll figure it out.
So in the psalm, the philosopher said, to commit your ways unto the divine, and you'll be granted the desires of your heart. Now, for a long time, I believed that meant that the Maserati that I really would like to have, right? that's, the divine's going to give me the Maserati, right? What I've come to find out during this hero's journey is that it's the desire that's granted unto me, not the result of the desire. That those desires come from the divine, and if they come from the divine, there's only one way to fail. Who can say what that is? You're nodding. What's that one way to fail?
Not do it.
That's right. To not do it or quit, right? If you knew you couldn't fail, what would your goals be? You cannot fail, folks. If you want to help people transform their lives, it's a wonderful thing to commit yourself to. And just know that regardless of the self-talk, that is a divine inspiration. And because it's been planted in you by the divine, you cannot fail. The promise is that you cannot fail. The only way to fail is to not heed the call or to quit along the way. So let's move to the next step, the promise. When somebody comes to you for help, right, what are you promising? If you've been called to speak, if you've been called to write a book, if you've been called to be a coach, what's the promise? What is it you're promising other people?
To help them?
That's right, to help them. It's very simple. Most people live, at least for a lot of their life, listening to a radio station called WIFM. Does anybody know what that stands for? What's in it for me, right? What's in it for me? If you're going to be there with them for an extended period of time or any amount of time, our time is the most precious commodity that we have. If you're going to be there with them, right, they want to know, why am I here? What's in it for me? Right? Why did I commit myself to this? Why did I invest in coaching? How do I know I'm going to get anything out of it? I have a lot of students that on the first session they're really nervous and they're really, worried that they're going to get something out of this experience, because for some of them it's the first time they've ever really invested in themselves. And so they're wondering, what's in it for me? And so don't be afraid to tell people what's in it for them. You know what I tell people at the end of every first call? What did I tell you at the end of the first call? 2 words.
So long ago.
I know. Expect what?
Miracle.
That's right. Now, I learned that from Joe. You could tell people to expect miracles. You could tell people what you're going to tell them in short form. Right? You could tell them why they need to listen up, why they need to write things down. Don't be afraid to make a promise. Early on in my coaching career, when I would work clearing with students, there was a period, I'll confess, there was a period of time where I would teach students about clearing. I'd tell them where to go to find clearing information. And I would send them, off to do some clearing, right? Why do you think I did that? Because I was afraid. What if we get to the end of the clearing and they didn't go from 8 or 9 to 4 or to 3, right? What if I didn't get the result that I was looking for? But now, I can make a promise. I can tell you, you know what, I don't care how long you've had a phobia of heights, it's over in 5 minutes. Just 3 weeks ago, I had a student. She was from Michigan, had been afraid of heights her whole life. It came out at the end of the session, and I got so excited. And I was like, hey, do you guys have time in about 45 minutes? I got this other student I got to get to, but I want to come back and I want to get you over that. I'm going to snap you out of that, right? And she's like, yeah. She's like, I've been to therapists and I've read a lot, and she said, I've had this since childhood. It might be hard. I didn't hear any of that. You know what that sounded like to me? You ever watch Charlie Brown? Whoa, 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 whoa. Right? Because I knew that I could make a promise. Right? I knew that I could be transformational in her life, the same way that you can be. So I call her back up. I tell her, do you have a footstool? Right? She gets a footstool. I asked her if she had something like a golf ball. She had the golf ball, and I took her through a process that actually snapped her out of her fear of heights. They were going on family vacation to Six Flags, or was it Seven Flags? It was like a week and a half later, they went to Six Flags, and she went on the biggest roller coaster that they had. She literally said that she tried to make up for everything that she had missed out on as a kid. You know, she went on every ride that involved heights because she was amazed that that had actually happened for her. But I was confident enough that I could offer a promise, right? So the fourth step in being transformational is offering a promise. Tell people what they can expect, what the deliverable is going to be, okay? Now, who here mentioned that they have a book in them? Trout?
Well, I'm in the authorship program, so I better.
Okay. So now you got to think about, well, what's your content, right? What are you going to tell people? What are you going to offer? And this is kind of, I'd say, probably the easy part, because there's a lot of content out there. Like I said, personal development involves a lot of plagiarism, if you will. I mean, I have original thoughts, and I've had original things. I've actually come up with my own clearings that I've developed. But really, coming up with content is fairly simple. And you can take any content and put your stamp on it, can't you? I clear in a different way than Adam clears, right? I clear in a different way than Gil clears. There may be some similarities, but my clearing has my stamp all over it. If a student has trouble doing it on their own, I actually did a clearing audio that you guys can access. It's really easy to find. In fact, I'm going to make it available to Dave, and Dave's going to load it up in the I Achieve Today website, and you guys can access that clearing. And you can have access to that content 24/7, anytime you need to go through a clearing and maybe you're not able to reach the support coaches because it's after hours or something, and that can be a rescue remedy for you. So look for that pretty soon. But it's all about content. So now we're going to get vulnerable again. I know I'm asking you guys to take your armor off. So who here would like to share something that they would share as maybe one item of their content? What do you feel that you have to share that's unique? Maybe something you'd write a chapter about in a book. It doesn't have to be long. Just right here.
I'm going through a separation right now. I haven't gotten divorced yet, but definitely bring that up. I know I went through a really, really rough, rocky marriage, and just talking about that would take a whole book probably.
Okay.
But,
I want you to,
probably just a chapter.
when did you leave? When did you separate from the relationship?
3 years ago.
3 years ago. So do me a favor, close your eyes.
Okay.
I want you to go back to that time when you were leaving, and I want you to think about what you thought about yourself. And maybe, I would imagine that maybe there were some feelings of failure, and I couldn't make it work, and I tried everything, and nothing I did worked, and I can't change him. And what would you tell yourself now? What would you tell yourself 3 years ago? What's the advice that you would give to yourself?
You're fine, you're okay. You didn't cause this. It's you can do this. You can do this on your own.
Is there anybody that's ever needed to hear that in their life? Would that make for some good content? I know there are a lot of people out there saying you can do it, but you know what? Her story's unique. Her experience is unique. Her message is going to have her special energetic brand. Now, Gil spoke before me, so I can get a little bit woo-woo, right? But I believe that every message that you send out, that your voice has an energetic signature. right? Which is why you can hear something from somebody for a lot of years, then you hear it from somebody else, and all of a sudden, it's like a chemical reaction is going off in your body and your brain and your soul, right?
Yes.
That person's energetic signature was meant just for you and for whoever else would resonate from that message. So even though it sounds like something everybody's heard before, your message is going to affect certain people in a special way. Who was here last year? You were here last year? I spoke about something that a lot of people at first were like, oh, here we go again. It was just basically the 5 steps of the law of attraction, right? And we've heard that a lot. But at the end, I had people come up and they said, wow, that was me. I never heard it that way before. Or I never considered this or I never considered that. It had my own energetic brand, my own energetic quality. And it resonated with people in a way that was maybe different than even Joe Vitale would teach it. Or different than the way that Aisake would teach it, right? And so you have your own energetic brand. So never allow yourself to believe that it's all been heard before, that it's all been said before, that it's all been done before. Because there are people out there that are waiting for you to share that message. When I was in college, I found a book at a used bookstore. It was called The Power of Mental Cybernetics. So not to be confused with Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz, but it was The Power of Mental Cybernetics. I almost didn't buy the book because the title was really intimidating, right? But what caught me was at the bottom it said, how to lead a high voltage life. And this was a period in my life where I was really trying to study everything that I could about personal development, but I bought the book. And I was still intimidated by that title. This was 1996. It was my freshman year in college, Idaho State University. I didn't read the book until 2003 in Twin Falls, Idaho. I'd come to a crossroads in my life. And one day, the book just jumped out at me. There was something about that title at that time that resonated with me, right? And I had looked that book in the face, metaphorically speaking. For years, it had sat there on my bookshelf. But at that time in my life, I was ready for that message. Now, there were some things in there that I'd read before. There were some things that were new. But what was interesting was no matter how many things I'd read, no matter how many people I'd listened to, that book was the first time I ever felt like I deserved something more. There was something about that book that shut off that part of me that didn't believe that I deserved things. That was in 2003, and by 2005, I started with the Jack Canfield Success Principles program. I helped to build that program. We had left Idaho not knowing where we were going to live, but I decided I had to jump. Anybody ever hear Steve Harvey talk about jump? Mm-hmm. Right? It was the first time in my life I had the power to jump to that degree. Didn't know where we were going to live. When they said, hey, we'd like to offer you the job, I said, okay, I'll take it. Right? I told my wife, I said, I don't know how we're going to do it. But I just felt at that point, right, that this was my time to jump. And so don't ever allow yourself to believe that somebody isn't going to resonate with what you have to say because they've heard it before or because you heard it said before. Right? That's just the ego getting you to re-identify with all of those limiting beliefs that Gil talked about. Okay, so when you present or when you write a book, right, you want to make sure that you have a fair amount of content. Now I put down here 1, 2, 3, about 3 points of content, right? You might want to have more, but you can get away with 3 points of content. When you're speaking, 3 to 4 points of content is usually probably the minimum, right? You don't want to spend too much time talking about the same thing because people want to feel like they got some breadth, they got some value out of the time that they spent, right? Now, what I like to say is I'm going to give you 4 or 5 pieces of content, but if all you get is this one thing, then I've done my job, right? Then I've helped you to transform your life. So who else has a piece of content or something they thought about that maybe they like to write about that they feel could be transformational to somebody else?
As you know, with you having been my coach, I work with a lady who's a fashion designer, and we've worked really hard to get the business going. But one of the things that was a struggle for me, even though I'm an introvert, apparently I tend to enjoy the limelight. It was hard, yes. It was hard to realize that it is her business, even though we're working together. It's really my job to support her and not force her to give me some form of recognition outside, or to feel that, oh, it's Gerard and I, Gerard's a co-designer. My role is to support and to help the business grow. And it took me a long time to understand that this is what's gonna make the business grow. And the minute I did, everything happened. That was about the time you came in my life.
So last year, at about this time, the goal was 5 dresses a week, and now they're doing, what, 15 to 20?
Yes.
So the company's taken off, and it's going to go viral. It's amazing. All of the clothing that they do is hand done, right? It's not done like you'd imagine in a super big factory in China or somewhere, right? It's all done by a small team that they have in Haiti, and it's all customized, right? So you send all of your dimensions, you send every way that you want it to fit, how you want it to look, and you send it to Gerard's company, and they'll make a dress, or if you're a man, they'll make a suit that is bioidentical. That's what we called it, right?
Yes,
Bioidentical clothing, that's right. So, because you see bioidentical hormones, and that's kind of what we talked about with bioidentical clothing. So anybody else have content that they think that would be transformational?
Through some experiences raising my family, I noticed that, well, I had them too, but I didn't notice mine. But I noticed my children had a lot of voices, especially when they started being junior high through high school. And it messed with them. I had a son who made a very serious suicide attempt. Through that, I became a very determined mom to find out how to help them figure out how to manage that, manage what was going on in there.
So what did you learn from that?
What do I teach them?
Yeah, what did you learn that you're now teaching?
That
And
they,
you know, I mean,
yeah, that they put a hero in front of them. Pick a hero. I have them write, what do you love about that hero? And then I have them turn around and say, now read that hero story to me only in place of Captain America or whoever it is you put your name. And then they have to read it a third time, you put I.
yeah.
And I say, okay, and then you read that and you do that, and I have them build this bubble around themselves so that the negative can't get in. And when they get a hole and they hear those negative thoughts, they get that hero verbiage up there and they patch that hole.
That's awesome.
And get it back out.
You know, one of the things that I teach is, anybody ever see Monty Python and the Search for the Holy Grail?
Yeah.
So the Dark Knight stands in my forehead and says, "You shall not pass." That's what it says to all negativity. You shall not pass. You shall not pass. Right? You shall not pass. Anytime there's negativity, that's my guardian. Right? You shall not pass. And if negativity takes a swipe at me, it's merely a flesh wound. So, but you've got to find something that you can put in your brain, right? That is your guardian. I know a guy, one of my mentors says, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. And he says it, that doesn't matter. Somebody starts to vomit on, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It's not that I don't want to listen, it's just the negativity, doesn't matter. Let me step over here for a minute. In fact, what he says is, he says, excuse me, I'll be right back. And he takes 3 steps back. He puts his tiger suit or whatever it is that he's thinking in his mind. He puts his armor on. And then he goes back. And he says, okay, what is it that you wanted to share, right? And but he puts on his armor because he cannot, and you cannot afford to allow yourself to take on that negativity, right? So, thank you for sharing that. Are you in the authorship program?
No.
You're not? Who's your coach?
I don't have them yet.
Awesome. Okay. So, send me an email, gdowney@achievetoday.com, and let's talk about that. Let's explore the possibility, because that's a book just waiting to come out. Seriously. When I'll tell you what, there's part of me that realizes and recognizes that personal development should start really young. And I didn't do it as much as I probably should have in that way. But, you know, I've got 7 kids and we homeschool, and personal development is now a big part of what we do. I mean, my kids have been to Get Motivated. You know, my daughter wanted to come up and hear me speak yesterday. She's gone to just about every time that I've gone out to speak outside. Like I go to homeschool conferences and I do some speaking to youth. And she wants to be there because she has an appetite now for personal development. So there are kids that are just hungry for that message. So reach out to me. Okay, so content. Anybody else? What's your first name again?
Jane.
Jane.
From Maine.
Jane from Maine. Jane from Maine has found herself on the plane. In the mountains. Go ahead, Jane.
Getting ahead of the pain.
That's right. I love it.
So, I've been on and off pharmaceutical medications for depression
Yeah.
and other things for about 40 years.
Okay.
On and off. And every time I've tried to go off, psychiatrists and therapists say, oh, no, you're doing good. That's when we tell you it's working, so you got to stay on it.
Oh, yeah.
And I've tried to go off on my own, and I feel a little bit sad, and gee, maybe they're probably right, I gotta take them, because I don't want to be sad. I want to feel good, it means they're helping me. But anyway, so since I started the Chief today, I've successfully gone off my antidepressants.
Yay!
And I feel better than ever.
You know, I had a student about 3 years ago. She was a psychiatrist, graduated from Brown. I mean, she's like a big shot in New Jersey, and she hates the current pharmaceutical or the current psychiatric model, and she's actually making attempts to change it. So she came through coaching and realized that the coaching model was more advantageous than the broken psychological model. She now makes her patients sign a contract that they will work with her to get off of the medication that they're on. That if they're not willing to work off the medication, she says, I think you maybe better go get an opinion from someone else and work with someone else, because I'm here to help you transform. And you can't afford to live the rest of your life on medication. She, at the time, she wanted to become a coach, and because she's in academia and she's kind of taken on big pharma, she felt like she needed to get her coach training from a university, right? NYU is the only college out there that offers personal development coaching education. It's wildly expensive, right? It was like $30,000 or $40,000. And so if you're considering our coaching program to become a coach, it's a fraction of that. And but if that's something you want to do, talk to your coach. If you don't have a coach currently, or if it's been a while, just reach out to me and I'll point you in the right direction. So before we move on, anybody want to share something by way of content? Okay, awesome. You guys are really great today. I appreciate your involvement. Okay, so this next thing is something we call seeding. Or this is kind of like a pre-close, right? If you are speaking and you have a product that you want somebody to purchase, or if you're coaching and you want that person to take additional steps, like you're going to ask them to get out of their comfort zone, right? You want to find out if they're ready, and so you want to seed a little bit. So you want to ask some questions, How many of you feel like this has been valuable content? I mean, what I'm sharing with you today, how many feel that this has been valuable? How many of you have felt before this presentation, and I'm going to just ask it honestly, how many of you feel now like maybe you want to write a book or maybe you want to be a speaker and you didn't really think about it before? Because you have something to share, right? So this is where we start asking some enrolling questions, or you ask the individual to consider some things. It's what we call implication, right? So you want to ask an implication question. Who here has felt stuck about something in their life and they were struggling? Okay, so this is good because you came out of a relationship after a long time. So what would have happened if you would have stayed?
I would have been the same stuff.
Yeah, where would you be 5 years from now? You'd be stuck,
This,
right?
it is truly transformational when you take the jump, take the leap,
Yeah.
leap of faith, and go. I found the Chief today through, I was led here.
I believe that.
Because
believe
the
that.
universe opened up and said, okay, you're taking this leap.
Yeah.
Here,
And
here
it met
go.
you, right? It met you.
Here you go. Uh-huh.
What did Indiana Jones experience in the search for the Holy Grail, right? He thought there was this big cliff. And he was told that he was going to have to take a step. And he was afraid. But what did he do? He did something that he could put belief in, right? He grabbed a little bit of sand and he threw it out there. The path started to show itself. How many of you are there right now that right here, in this moment, we're throwing sand out in the path? is starting to show itself for you? So you've got to ask those questions, right? Now, I don't like to wallop people, but sometimes pain is what gets people to move. It's what gets you to get leverage on yourself. So when I seed, I'll ask a negative implication question. You know, if you don't take action, what's going to happen? And it hurts a little bit. But I believe in mercy too. So I like to wipe it off and say, no, what's life going to be like in 5 years if you take action, if you do this thing? Right? Because I want you to dwell on the possibilities. Right? That's seeding. It's getting people to look down the road of things that they don't want and down the road of things that they do want. Because if there's no hope in it for you, if you do not realize the contrast, it's going to be very difficult for you to invest in yourself, to believe that you really deserve it and that it's possible for you. Okay? It's the same way for other people. When you're speaking, when you're writing, when you're coaching, right? You constantly want to be seeding and getting people to consider taking that action, getting them to move forward. Okay? Now, one of the things that you've got to know about what I do, and, you know, I'll be really transparent here. I love to tell you guys how much I love what I'm doing as a coach and as a speaker. Can you tell that I love what I do? Mm-hmm. Is there any doubt? Can you tell that I love you guys? That I really genuinely care about where you are and about where you can go, right? But just knowing that, right? I'm reading a book right now called The Secret of Jewish Coaching. And one of the things that it teaches is that the purpose of coaching is to instill faith. Right? It's my job, it's my role, it's your job, it's your role to put faith into the people that you're writing to, that you're talking to, that you're speaking to. You have to put faith into that individual because we're all like a little child to some degree. We need to know. You know, one of my students sent me an awesome shirt for my birthday. It's got a picture of a unicorn, and it says, I only have to believe in myself. Right? But to some degree, we do need to know that there are other people that believe in us. You need to know that your coach believes in you. Right? You need to know that the person that you're reading their works, that they believe in you. Right? The person speaking to you need to know that they believe in you. And so you will need to let people know that you believe in them, right? That you can put faith into them, because there are times in my life where if it wasn't for people that believed in me, because I wasn't believing in myself, I tell you, if there wasn't people that believed in me, I don't know that I would be where I am. You know, it goes back to 8th grade. I had a homeroom teacher in junior high school at Reform School. His name was Jerry Borschelt. And I remember, man, I wasn't getting with the program. I was there for like the first semester. It was the first time I'd ever been out of my father's house. And I just was not with it. It was the first time in my life where I could actually say that I didn't want something and not get hit upside the head or something, right? They gave me work detail. That was kind of how it worked. And by the time I left after the first semester to go home for home visit, I had 180 something hours of work detail up on the board because I was so busy telling people what I didn't want. Right? It was the first step of the law of attraction. I was getting really familiar with all this stuff that I didn't want in my life. But it was empowering, right? That was where I really started to wake up. But Jerry Borschelt taught me the next step. He called me in one day and he sat me down. And he took out this box and he started handing me these cards and he asked me to read these things. And so I started reading. And then he asked me to answer some questions, right? So I started answering questions. And then he sat back and he looked at me, and this is a guy that didn't pull punches. And he said, just as I suspected. He said, what a waste. And I was like, what? Because I'm a Leo, right? There's a little bit of ego going on. And he said, you're a genius. And he said, you don't even know it. He said, I bet nobody's ever told you. And he said, but you're so busy screwing up that you're not getting with the program. And he said, you know, Father Cruz and I, he said, we talk about you. He said, we stand up there on the steps and we look out over the schoolyard and we wonder, when's this kid going to get with it? And so he gets up, he walks over to his desk, he takes out a 3x5 card and a copy of Jonathan Livingston Seagull. He sits down, he writes on the card 2 words in Latin, carpe diem. And he slides it across the table. He said, do you know what that means? I'm looking at him. I have no idea. Foreign language, right? He said it means seize the day. make every day a masterpiece. I think that was probably the first time in my life that anybody told me that I had any choice. And I remember it just as it was yesterday. He's going on 70 years old and he's still teaching there. He doesn't like some of the changes that they made recently, so he's promised that he's going to plague them with his presence and his discontent. But he still shows up, he still makes the drive, and he's still being transformational in the lives of lost boys. The lost boys of Hannah Boy Center. That can be you for another person, right? He was that for me, and that can be you for someone else. It was that day that I decided that I was going to take control of the rest of my life. Now, it wasn't easy. There were times that, I didn't always cross the straight and narrow as often as I'd like, but I did, enough times that I'm finally here. I mean, I don't think I ever really walked it. I just kind of, until eventually it's led to where I am. But it's the fact that there was somebody that was transformational for me that led to where I am today. Last year, I was Coach of the Year. Right? I helped to create the Jack Canfield Success Principles Coaching Program. I've been married 20 years, have 7 kids. My kids are amazing. My wife is amazing. It hasn't always been easy. I've talked about, some challenges that we faced. But I've learned some things that have helped me to get to exactly where I want to be. And I feel an obligation to share that with others. Right? Because somebody was transformational for me. Isn't it worth it to you guys to be transformational to somebody else? Can I get a yes or can I get a yes?
Yes.
Okay, so the next thing that you want to do is, I'll just show you. Who here would like to maybe share some of their takeaways from this presentation so far? Just 1 or 2 quick takeaways? If you've ever been on my group calls, I do this a lot, right? What's a takeaway that you've had so far? Right here, and then we'll go in the back.
That I can help other people.
Absolutely you can.
My experiences are worth something.
Absolutely.
And if my experiences help somebody else, I really have an obligation to share them.
Do you know what Zig Ziglar said? He said that there's something called the sin of the desert. I appreciate that. The sin of the desert. I want you to write this down. I usually don't emphasize writing stuff down, but I want you to write this down. The sin of the desert is knowing where the water is and not pointing people where to find it. Right? And that water may be within you. You may be the wellspring. And so if you do not speak up, you've missed an opportunity to be transformational for somebody. Am I right? Okay. And what's your first name of the back?
Joe,
Joe.
you said some words that I say all the time, but I've never heard anybody else articulate. And
I love it.
Yes,
You know what they call that? This is synchronicity, brother.
right on, man.
Okay, what do you got?
You have to be the guardian at the gate.
Yeah.
I say that all the time. You got to be the guardian
Absolutely.
at the gate. Now, what I didn't ever say, which I love Monty Python, you shall not pass.
That's right.
So you will forever be in my brain as
You shall
appreciate
not
that.
pass. So are you
love
saying
that.
a swallow can carry a coconut? But husks.
Wait.
Yeah.
What kind of swallow?
What is it? Barn swallow?
Everybody can swallow.
Yeah, there you go. So, folks, the rest of the story, the end of my hero's journey, was the 20-something years of learning and consuming and being open and not having to defend myself all the time. If you're in a posture of always feeling like you have to defend yourself, you're going to be tuning out the opportunity to be transformed by other people and by other people's thoughts and ideas, right? You're awesome just as you are. And so today, the fact that I'm standing before you is not just a miracle, but it's a series of miracles. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening.